Welcome, my friend. Before you close your eyes tonight, let me tell you a story from a quiet little town in Maine. A place where the wind smells like pine and salt water, and the only thing louder than the waves is the ticking of old clocks. Because sometimes time doesn't just pass, it warns you. This is the story of a man named Arthur Bellamy, the town's only clockmaker. Everyone in Camden knew him, the man who could fix anything that ticked. From pocket watches to grandfather's clocks, older than the Civil War. His shop sat on the corner of Elm Street, next to a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon. To most people, Arthur was harmless, a quiet man in his late 50s, polite, steady, dependable. But Arthur had a secret. He didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in fate until the clock arrived. It came in late November, right after the first snow. The delivery man brought it from an estate sale out near Bar Harbor, an old Victorian house that had burned halfway down years ago. The clock was strange, taller than Arthur's workbench, carved from black walnut, and covered in tiny, twisting etchings that looked like vines or maybe veins. Its brass pendulum was still polished, though the gears inside were rusted and the back panel was warped with age. There was no maker's mark, no date, no serial number. Arthur had seen thousands of clocks in his lifetime. He'd never seen one like this. He took it apart carefully, laying the gears and springs across his bench like surgical tools. Something about the mechanism didn't make sense. There were no battery slots, no visible wind key. Yet when he touched the pendulum, it began to sway. Tick-tock, tick-tock. It started slow, hesitant, like a heartbeat finding rhythm. Then it settled into a perfect, steady pace. Arthur frowned. "That's not possible," he muttered. He hadn't wound it. That night, as he locked the shop, the sound still echoed faintly in the air. Tick-tock, tick-tock. As if the clock were alive. He went home to his empty apartment above the store. His wife, Ellen, had passed away 3 years earlier. He still talked to her sometimes when the nights felt too long. "Got a strange one today," he said to her photo on the mantle. "Doesn't run on batteries, doesn't wind up. Just ticks." He poured himself a small glass of whiskey and sat in his old recliner. At 9:37 p.m., the clock downstairs chimed. He frowned. It shouldn't have chimed. He hadn't connected the bell mechanism yet. Still, it rang. 12 clear, metallic notes. 12. Arthur looked at the clock on the wall. 9:38 now. And right then, his phone rang. It was his neighbor, Martha. She was crying. "Arthur, did you hear about Harold? He collapsed at the diner. They say he's gone." Arthur's mouth went dry. Harold Simmons, his old fishing buddy. "What time?" he asked quietly. They said, "Around 9:37. Arthur's whiskey trembled in his hand. He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, listening to the faint sound from below. The clock ticked, perfectly steady, all night long. The next morning, Arthur went downstairs and unplugged every other clock in the shop, just to make sure. Only one still ticked, the black walnut one. He placed his hand on the pendulum, trying to stop it. It resisted. It was like trying to hold back a heartbeat. For the next few days, the clock stayed quiet. No chime, no strange behavior. Arthur began to think it was all coincidence, that grief had just played tricks on his mind, until 3 nights later. At exactly 11:02 p.m., the clock chimed once. A deep, hollow sound that seemed to echo through the wood floor. Arthur froze, staring at it. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was the local news alert. Tragic accident on Highway 9. Victim identified as Martha Leland, age 64, of Camden. Time of death 11:03 p.m. Arthur dropped the phone. The clock's pendulum kept swinging, slow and calm. Tick, tock, tack. That was the night he started keeping a journal. He wrote the time, the date, and what the clock did, every single sound it made, every tick, every chime. And by the end of that first week, Arthur Bellamy knew something he could never explain to anyone else. The clock didn't measure time. It predicted death. Arthur Bellamy didn't believe in curses. But after that second death, he stopped telling himself what he did believe. He just watched, listened, waited. For nearly a week, the black walnut clock sat silent in the corner of his workshop. Its pendulum swayed gently, as if mocking him, but it never chimed again. The townspeople came in and out, bringing in old watches and mantel clocks, and Arthur tried his best to act normal. He polished gears, replaced springs, smiled politely. But in the back of his mind, that sound still lived, the deep metallic note that came 1 minute before Martha's death. 1 minute, exactly one. On the 8th night at 2:44 a.m., Arthur woke up suddenly. No dream, no noise, just awareness. He listened. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Then a chime. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound crawled through the floorboards. He sat up, his heart thudding in his chest. He grabbed his pocket watch. 2:45 a.m. He stared at the ceiling, waiting for the phone to ring. Waiting for something to happen. Nothing. Minutes passed. The silence grew heavy again. He almost laughed. Maybe it's broken, he whispered. Maybe it's the sound of sirens cut through the night. They wailed somewhere down the hill, near the harbor road. The next morning, the news came over the radio. A fishing trawler had caught fire offshore. 3 men dead. Time of incident, approximately 2:45 a.m. Arthur shut the radio off. He stood alone in the shop, staring at that black clock, and whispered, "What are you?" He tried to dismantle it again. He unscrewed the back panel, removed the pendulum, even pried out a few gears, but the ticking didn't stop. Tick, tock, tick, tock. He could feel it in his bones. He tried wrapping it in a thick blanket, putting it in the basement, even sealing it in a wooden crate. The ticking bled through everything like it wanted to be heard. By the end of the week, Arthur's face looked hollow, sleepless. People started to notice. "Arthur, you look pale," said Sheriff Harris when he came by to get his pocket watch repaired. "You working too hard again?" Arthur forced a smile. "Yeah, maybe. Just tired," the sheriff chuckled. "Don't wear yourself out. You're the only clock guy left in town?" He left, whistling as the bell on the shop door jingled behind him. Arthur looked back at the black walnut clock. For the first time, he thought he saw something strange about it. The carvings on the side, they weren't vines at all. They were lines, curling and looping, forming faint shapes of faces. Dozens of them, small and stretched, mouths open like they were silently screaming. He touched the wood. It felt warm. The next night, Arthur sat by the clock with a notebook and a cup of coffee, determined to understand. "If you're going to chime," he said, voice trembling, "then I'm going to know why." He stared for hours, the sound filling the quiet shop. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Then at 12:16 a.m., it chimed once. Arthur wrote it down. 12:16. He waited, watching the second hand on his wristwatch move. 12:17, 12:18, nothing. Maybe he thought it's over. Maybe it's random. Then his phone buzzed. He didn't recognize the number, but the voice on the other end did. It was Deputy Finch, the sheriff's right-hand man. "Arthur," he said quietly. "There's been an accident." Arthur's hand went cold. "Who?" "Sheriff Harris. Heart attack in his patrol car. They say it happened around 12:17. Arthur hung up without speaking. His knees nearly gave out. He looked at the clock again. Its pendulum was still swinging, perfectly calm. And for the first time, he thought he heard something under the ticking, a faint whisper, almost like breathing. He leaned in. The whisper grew louder. Then, faintly, the voice of Sheriff Harris echoed from inside the wooden case. "Arthur?" Arthur jumped back, knocking over his chair. The whisper stopped. The shop went dead quiet. He wanted to destroy it. Smash it, burn it, bury it, anything. He picked up a hammer, raised it high, and froze. Because what if destroying it stopped time itself? What if this cursed thing was holding something back, something worse? Arthur lowered the hammer slowly. His breath shook as he whispered, "I can't destroy you, can I?" The clock gave a single soft tick, almost like a reply. From that night on, Arthur never left the shop after dark. He kept a candle burning, always watching, waiting for the next chime. And when it came, he stopped pretending to be surprised, because deep down he knew the clock wasn't warning him. It was choosing. By December, the snow had swallowed the whole town. Camden looked peaceful from the outside white rooftops, pine trees heavy with frost, but Arthur Bellamy knew better. The peace was a lie. The black walnut clock hadn't stopped ticking since the night Sheriff Harris died, and every few days it chimed again. Once for one death, twice for two. Each time, Arthur wrote it down. He didn't even have to check the news anymore. He'd hear the chime, feel his stomach twist, and wait for the confirmation. A phone call, a headline, a knock on his door. It always came. The townsfolk began whispering. They noticed how Arthur's curtain stayed drawn, how his lights never went out. They said he'd gone strange since Ellen died, that grief had hollowed him out. And then came the night he stopped pretending to sleep. He sat in front of the clock, watching the pendulum's slow swing, when he noticed something new. Every time it ticked, the air in the room seemed to pulse like the heartbeat of something buried deep within the wood. He leaned closer, eyes half crazed, whispering, "You're alive, aren't you?" Tick, tock. He laughed quietly. "You know when they'll die, but do you decide it?" The candle beside him flickered, the pendulum slowed, and for one terrifying second stopped. The silence hit him like pressure in his chest. Then it began again, faster now. Tick, 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 tick. Arthur stumbled back. The chimes erupted all at once. 12 deafening gongs, shaking the windows. He fell to his knees, covering his ears, and then silence. When he looked up, his reflection in the glass face of the clock was smiling. But he wasn't. The next morning, the newspaper headline made him drop his coffee. 12 found dead in nursing home fire. 12. Arthur's hands trembled so hard the cup shattered on the floor. He looked at the clock. Its pendulum was still swaying, but slower, calmer. He whispered, "You did that." He didn't leave the shop for 2 days. Food piled up at the door. People mocked, but he didn't answer. On the 3rd day, Deputy Finch forced his way in. "Jesus, Arthur," he said, stepping over broken glass. "You look like hell." Arthur didn't answer. He was staring at the clock. Finch followed his gaze. "That thing still works?" "You've had it for weeks." Arthur said softly, "It works too well." Finch frowned. "You're not making sense. The town's getting nervous, you know. Every time there's a death, someone says they saw you nearby, or heard that clock of yours going off." Arthur looked up, eyes red and wide. "It's not me, it's this. It tells me when someone's about to die." 1 minute before, Finch exhaled slowly. "Arthur, listen to yourself. You need rest." But before Arthur could reply, the clock chimed once. The sound froze them both. Finch blinked. What the hell was that? Arthur's mouth went dry. 1 chime. It means 1 death. Finch gave a nervous laugh. "Yeah, right. So what, someone's dying right now?" They both waited. The seconds crawled. Then a sharp pop echoed from outside. Finch walked to the window. "Transformer blue," he said. "Half the block's dark." He turned around, but Arthur wasn't looking at the window anymore. He was staring at Finch's chest. "Deputy," Arthur whispered. Finch frowned. "What?" And then he collapsed. No warning, no sound. His body hit the floor like a sack of bricks. Arthur rushed to him, shaking his shoulders. No, not him, not. Finch's eyes stared upward, glassy and still. Arthur pressed his hand over the deputy's heart. Nothing. The clock's pendulum swung slowly, evenly. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Arthur screamed. The sound was raw, animal. He grabbed the clock by its frame and hurled it to the ground. It shattered into pieces, but inside, the gears kept turning. The pendulum still moved. The ticking didn't stop. He stumbled back, chest heaving. His eyes darted to the fragments on the floor, because beneath the gears, behind the faceplate, there was something he hadn't seen before. A small brass plaque covered in dust. He wiped it clean with shaking hands. The engraving read, Bellamy Timepieces, 1894. Arthur froze. That was his grandfather's company. The one that went out of business a century ago. His mind reeled. He'd grown up hearing stories about the Bellamy clocks, how one batch had been recalled after strange accidents. His grandfather had burned the records, but if this clock came from his family line, that meant it wasn't just an antique. It was connected to him. Arthur looked down at Finch's body, then at his trembling hands. "It's not warning me," he whispered. "It's following my blood." The wind outside picked up, howling against the glass. The pieces of the clock rattled on the floor, slowly pulling back together, gears turning, wood sliding, reforming. Arthur backed away, eyes wide with terror. No, stay dead. But the clock stood upright again, whole, flawless, its face shining faintly in the candlelight. The pendulum swayed once more, tick, tock, and then softly it whispered, "Your turn." Arthur didn't sleep. He couldn't. All night he sat in the cold workshop, staring at that impossible clock now standing upright again, its surface gleaming like nothing had ever touched it. Deputy Finch's body still lay on the floor, pale and still, eyes fixed open as if watching the pendulum swing. Tick, tock, tock. Arthur's lips trembled. "You're not supposed to exist," he whispered. "You died with them. You were destroyed." The clock said nothing, only ticked, patient, relentless. He moved closer, clutching the brass plaque in his hand. Bellamy Timepieces, 1894. His grandfather's company, his family's name. "Why me?" Arthur muttered. "Why come to me?" The candlelight flickered. The pendulum's reflection shimmered across his face. Then, softly, impossibly, the second hand stopped, and a voice came from inside the clock. Low, whispering, the sound of gears grinding against bone. "Because you are the last," it said. "The last Bellamy to finish what was begun." Arthur stumbled backward, heart pounding. No, that's not." The voice interrupted, louder now, overlapping with dozens of faint whispers, men, women, even children, all speaking through the gears. "Your blood built the first of us. Your grandfather promised time, and he delivered death." Images flashed in Arthur's mind. His grandfather's workshop, flames licking at blueprints, the sound of screaming metal. He fell to his knees, clutching his head. "Stop, please stop." But the whispers grew clearer. "He bound our souls to the ticking. For every clock made, one life taken. You carry his sin, Arthur, and now time has come to collect." Arthur's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Finch's body. "Take me," he begged. "Just end it. Stop hurting people." The pendulum stopped swinging. For a long, cold second, everything was still. Then it reversed. Tick-tock, tick-tock, backward now, each motion faster than the last. The room's air thickened, trembling. Tools clattered to the floor. The candle blew out. Arthur screamed as the air turned black, filled with the echo of hundreds of ticking clocks. And then silence. When the morning light finally crept into the workshop, the door was wide open. Snow had drifted inside. The floor was empty. No sign of Finch, no sign of Arthur. Only the black walnut clock stood in the center of the room. It wasn't ticking anymore. Its hands were frozen at 3:17 a.m. Days passed. The sheriff's department sent search teams. They found nothing. No footprints past the doorway, no blood, nothing. The only thing unusual was the smell. A faint trace of smoke like burnt oil and wood. A week later, the town held a small memorial for Arthur Bellamy. They said he was a good man, lonely, maybe a little haunted by grief. Some whispered that he'd lost his mind. Others said he'd run away into the forest. The shop was boarded up for months. But then, one spring morning, a for sale sign appeared. A young couple from Boston bought it, said they'd turn it into a little antique boutique. They loved the look of the place, the old counters, the dusty air. On their first day cleaning, the husband found something behind the counter, a tall wooden clock, dark as midnight. He ran his hand over the carvings. "Weird design," he said. "No plot, no key." His wife smiled. "Let's keep it. It gives the shop character." That night, as they finished unpacking, the husband stood in front of the clock, staring at it. The pendulum swayed gently as if pushed by an unseen hand. He tilted his head. "Did you wind this thing?" "No," his wife called from the kitchen. "Tick, tock. Guess it's still working," he said softly. Then it chimed. Once. He looked at his watch, 9:14 p.m., smiled faintly. Old things got life in it yet? He didn't see the reflection in the glass, the faint outline of an old man's face, eyes hollow, mouth whispering from the other side of the pendulum. He didn't hear the voice that followed, soft as breath. "Welcome, Mr. Bellamy." Tick-tock, tick-tock. End of The Clockmaker's Curse.